You have a scar on your body you were born with, not from an accident, not from surgery. It was put there before you took your first breath. Run your finger over it. It sits in the center of you, proof of something. You've looked at it your entire life without really seeing it. Reptiles don't have one. Birds don't have one. Most animals on Earth don't carry this mark. So why do you? Roughly 310 million years ago, the first amniotic egg appeared on Earth. It was one of the most significant inventions in the history of life, not invented by a mind, but by blind accumulation of survival. The egg carried everything an embryo needed: nutrients, fluid, a sealed membrane to keep the outside world out. Reptiles could now reproduce on dry land. They were free of the water, and for hundreds of millions of years, this system worked without modification. The embryo inside a reptile egg absorbs its nutrients directly through the yolk sac membrane. When it hatches, the connection seals cleanly. The tissue retracts, the skin closes, and the animal enters the world unmarked. There is no scar because the separation is orderly, a clean architectural withdrawal. The building completes itself and the scaffolding disappears without a trace. Mammals inherited this same basic biology. The earliest mammals still laid eggs. The platypus and echidna do today, and they carry a faint remnant scar from yolk sac attachment, barely visible, easily missed. But somewhere between 180 and 160 million years ago, a different solution began to evolve inside a small population of proto-mammals. Instead of sealing the embryo inside a shell and leaving it, the body began keeping it inside. The mother became the egg. And that change, gradual, imperfect, extraordinary, set in motion everything that leads to the mark you carry now. The problem this new system had to solve was supply. A shelled egg carries a fixed amount of nutrients. A developing mammal, growing larger, more complex, with a bigger brain demanding more energy, needed something better. It needed a live connection. And so the placenta evolved, a temporary organ, built fresh with every pregnancy, stitched between two separate individuals who share no permanent tissue. It is, by any measure, one of the most sophisticated structures biology has ever produced. The umbilical cord is its lifeline. Running from the placenta to the developing abdomen, it carries two arteries and one vein, oxygenated blood flowing in, deoxygenated blood flowing back out. The attachment point on the fetal abdomen is where the cord anchors. When birth occurs and the cord is severed, the stump dries and falls away, usually within 1 to 3 weeks. What remains is the navel, a sealed scar at the site of the most intimate biological connection a human being will ever form. Research published in the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology has documented the extraordinary vascular complexity at this junction. Hundreds of microscopic vessels converging at a single point, then closing permanently at birth. A counterintuitive finding complicates the simple picture. The belly button's exact shape, whether it becomes an innie or an outie, has almost nothing to do with how the cord was cut or clamped. That belief persists widely, but the evidence doesn't support it. A 2013 study from the University of Missouri confirmed that navel morphology is determined almost entirely by the way scar tissue forms as the cord detaches, not by the midwife or obstetrician's technique. The body decides. The shape is a consequence of individual healing, not human intervention. Another reminder that we control less of our own biology than we assume. The navel is also, quietly, a functional landmark. Surgeons use it as a reference point during laparoscopic procedures. In developmental biology, it marks the closure of the umbilical ring, the last point at which the abdominal wall seals completely during fetal development. Failures here produce umbilical hernias, one of the most common congenital conditions in newborns, affecting roughly 1 in 5 infants. Research from the Karolinska Institute in Sweden has linked the timing and completeness of umbilical ring closure to broader patterns in abdominal wall development, a small scar that reflects the success or failure of an entire system. Perhaps, most unexpectedly, the umbilical cord itself contains stem cells that are now a significant resource in regenerative medicine. Wharton's jelly, the gelatinous tissue surrounding the umbilical vessels, is rich in mesenchymal stem cells with broad therapeutic applications. A landmark paper in the journal Cell Transplantation documented their use in treating graft versus host disease and certain autoimmune conditions. A structure that was once discarded as medical waste is now stored in cord blood banks around the world. The cord dies. The scar remains. But the biology inside it turned out to be worth preserving. Every placental mammal alive today carries a navel. Whales have them. Elephants have them. Dolphins, hidden beneath smooth hydrodynamic skin, carry a faint line where the cord attached hundreds of millions of evolutionary years of shared ancestry compressed into a single anatomical point. The belly button is not uniquely human. It is the signature of an entire reproductive strategy, a biological contract between parent and offspring, unlike anything that came before it. Modern medicine has deepened this connection further. The umbilical vein remains patent, open and usable, in newborns for the first week of life, allowing emergency medications and fluids to be delivered directly through the navel in critical situations. Neonatologists rely on this anatomical window when no other vein can be found. The cord is cut, but the architecture persists briefly, still functional, still useful before it finally closes. Even in its death, it offers something. What does it mean to carry a scar from before you were a person? Before you had a name, a language, a thought? The navel predates every identity you will ever hold. It is the one mark on your body that belongs entirely to biology, not to culture, not to choice, not to experience. It records a moment when you were not yet separate, when another body was doing the work of keeping you alive through a cord you will never remember. Reptiles enter the world sealed and self-sufficient. They arrive complete. The mammalian path was different. Longer dependency, deeper connection, slower emergence into independence. The belly button is the physical record of that dependency. You were once entirely reliant on another body for oxygen, for nutrients, for warmth. Then the cord was cut. Then you breathed. But here is the reframe that changes the entire story. The belly button is not a remnant. It is not leftover biology, vestigial, meaningless like wisdom teeth or the coccyx. It is a record. It is the oldest scar on your body, formed before any memory, before any experience, before you existed as a self at all. Every human who has ever lived carried it. Every human who will ever live will carry it too. You think of it as a small, strange feature of your abdomen. What it actually is documentation. Proof that you were once connected to someone else so completely that your blood moved through their body. The belly button is not where life left a mark on you. It is where life proves that you were never, at the beginning, alone.